Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Prospero.ai stock market live streams. We'll see how many people were able to get here today. We're on a weird time schedule this week with the Monday closing for Memorial Day, and we even faked you guys out. We said we were going to go live at 3 to begin with, but we're live at 1 p.m. So surprise, surprise, if you guys just got our email and were notified that we're going back live. But hello, everybody. We already have 10 people in here, so that's super cool. Welcome back. Like the video if you're excited for the topics for today. A lot to go over. There's some big news shaking up the markets. We're still seeing a big mix in the Prospero AI net option sentiment for the SPY and the QQQ. And it's probably because of the story we got on the tariff deliberations going on. So a Manhattan-based court of international trade says the tariffs have to be stopped, and that what Trump has proposed has overreached his bounds. That made the markets very excited last night in the after hours, but we've seen a bit of a fade happening today. The markets are now actually in the last half hour or so starting to come back into the green a bit, but still off the morning's highs. So a lot to digest in the markets right now. A lot of uncertainty seemingly afoot, and George will be in here to take us all through it in just a couple of moments. And then we'll react to the NVIDIA earnings, which were well received by the market. Let's see live how NVIDIA has been able to perform throughout the day, if they've been able to maintain their gains. So NVIDIA is still up 4% over the $140 per share mark, and I think just about 5 or so percent away from all-time highs. So NVIDIA stock is climbing. We will go through the earnings, how we're feeling about them, and the rest of their impact on the AI, chip, and tech sectors, and what they had to say. Then we'll get into the Meta and Anduril partnership, which was just announced today. Looks like Meta is going to be offering some of their virtual reality products for the US military. So good for Meta. Actually, if you guys follow us on Twitter, I chose Meta to spotlight today in our replies. So every morning I pick a stock, and then every afternoon we go over the SPY and QQQ. So if you guys aren't following us on Twitter, you could follow us there. Then we're going to get into Boeing, which is resuming China deliveries next month now. And Boeing is a stock in the Prospero signals that has gone through, times where it looks great in the signals, times where it looks terrible in the signals. So heading into this big event and resumption of their business, how does Boeing look and what are we thinking about that stock? Then we have Elf Beauty, which was up as much as 30% today. Time to get a live look to see if they've been able to hold on to their gains. Currently up about 23.5%, so still up a lot, not quite as high as they were this morning. They're making a splashy acquisition of a company that is led by Hailey Bieber. So is this pop here to stay, and can the shares keep climbing? I'll let you know the details of the acquisition. Looking at Elf Beauty now, it is up over 100% from their low on April 16th. Pretty insane move for them. 84% in just the past month. But if you scan out, the stock's been pretty bad for a couple of years now. So maybe it was beat up and now it's just catching up on some of the profits that it had given back. Then we're going to get into Amazon, which reached a deal with the New York Times to use their content for its AI. But I looked at New York Times in the Prospero app and their signals, and they are pretty bad. So I don't know. Is this going to be enough to save the New York Times, and we'll open it up to other legacy content companies if they are able to license their data? Will that turn their businesses around, as the written content industry has been in a bad place, I think, since the online takeover? And then last but not least, today we'll get into the air taxis. I don't know if you guys are following some of these stocks, but they're making pretty large moves. So stocks we're going to highlight are Joby Aviation, Blade Air Mobility, and Archer Aviation. I think Joby kicked off this recent hype in the air taxi sector of the market when they announced a investment from Toyota for $250 million. That stock is up 40% in the last month and made just a huge move the other day. And then there are several other stocks in the sector. I think Blade is the one that has performed the worst. And I think all of these came public as SPACs. So interesting to see that SPACs are getting some life after they were, I don't know if you guys remember the SPAC craze, but they all got hyped up and they all got crushed. And now it seems like there are some diamonds in the rough starting to emerge from that whole IPOing of SPACs back in the day. And last but not least, at the end of the stream today, we will turn over to the model portfolio update. With the signals in Prospero being so split, it's going to be interesting to see what George decides to do and how he manages the portfolio. Let me just take a moment here as we're waiting to get into our topics to say thank you to all 70 of you that have already tuned into the stream today at quite a random time from our past scheduling. So thank you. Glad you guys found our stream. Like it up, and we are going to get into the topics in a second. Let me actually give ourselves a like. If I am asking you guys to do it, I might as well do it as well, right? On the Prospero account. Okay, pulling it up right now. That's weird. It doesn't say we're live on YouTube. Are we live on YouTube? Oh, there we are. I found it. Okay, there we go. I just gave us a like, so we're good to go there. If there's any stock specifically you want to see discussed or hear discussed on the stream today that I hadn't mentioned in the list of topics that I just went over, feel free to comment them for us in the chat, and we'll be happy to address any of your specific stocks, or any other AI, business, macro topics that you want to get into. If any of the topics really piqued your curiosity and you're excited for us to get into it today, let me know in the chat, and maybe I'll move it on up the list to the top of what we're going to talk about. But we are just in a waiting game here right now, and we will begin in just a moment, everybody. I guess we should take a look at some of the stocks that are moving bigly today and see what's going on in the market. Let's look at the Mag 7 and some of the other stocks. We've been covering a lot of big movers recently in the nuclear sector, in the quantum sector. I think growth stocks are having a resurgence with the market now climbing back close to all-time highs. Okay, starting with Mag 7. Looks like we're a little split today. We have Apple in the red, Amazon, Meta, Microsoft, Tesla green, and Google in the red. Nvidia was in the green when we just looked before. Let's look, are there any other stocks that are moving bigly on the day? We'll have to look at the nuclear and quantum. Actually, all of the air taxi stocks, which we're going to cover for their upward moves, are all actually red today. Archer, Blade, and Joby. Oh, you know what's funny? I saw this Build-A-Bear stock. We covered this stock just, what was it, a week or so ago? Was anybody in the stream when we were talking about Build-A-Bear? It's now officially at an all-time high and up 19% today after they had good earnings. So we were just ahead of the curve on the noticing how good of a stock Build-A-Bear was in terms of its performance. And that's only continued here this week. So interesting to see that Build-A-Bear has now crossed $50 per share and a market cap of over $670 million for building bears in the year 2025. Pretty crazy. But yeah, that stock is up as well. And it was up as much as 26%. So wild move for Build-A-Bear. Let's look at the nuclear stocks now. All right, Oklo, SMR, both red today. Coming off their lows of the day, though, so they are coming back. And let's take a look at some of the quantum names. Hello, George. Welcome to the stream.
Hello.
George, something we're not going to talk about today, but it's funny is that, did you see Build-A-Bear was up 20% today and hit an official all-time high?
No,
earnings. We were like
hilarious.
A week or two ahead of the curve on how good they've been performing in the markets. But yeah, I thought that was really funny to see that today. Yeah. Taking one last look at some of the stocks we've been talking about on stream, the quantum stocks A lot of them red today. IonQ, QBTS, RGTI, all red. CoreWeave is just barely in the green. They actually crossed the $130 mark, up 12% in the morning, before some of the gains of the day got faded. But George, where we have to start today is the split that has been persistent in the QQQ and SPY net options sentiment levels. Which one do you think is more accurately representing the fear or greed in the market, and which one do you think is more correct right now? I mean, since they're so split, would you say that like one is forecasting a downturn and one is forecasting continued upward momentum, or do you kind of have to look at them together and meet somewhere in the middle and just say it's uncertain right now either way?
I mean, sometimes you see this, how it like plays out risk, right? I was like looking a little delayed, but I actually realized that it might be my computer. When I was like playing an NBA game last night, it was like looking a little delayed, or a few nights ago. I don't know what it is about my video feedback, but yeah, good news for my paranoia. Also, this plant is not getting its day in the sun. It should get more. So yeah, I mean, I think it's really tough. Like, I'm not doing poorly this week, but I'm not doing that well. And I think it's just very hard to get a feeling on how to manage this risk, right? Because I think, the market is not deciding either, right? I think it was kind of like a surprisingly green day on Tuesday as we kind of saw the market, as we saw it ascend. But QQQ net option sentiment went up, and it was like kind of easy to explain it that way. Now it's like, it's coming back down to earth a little bit in a way that you'd expect for SPY net option sentiment. But I think it's just like, sometimes it's as simple as, your first read on something, which is that I think people are unsure. But I think, how it's being played is they're saying, okay, I'm unsure. Like, some of the news events we're going to talk later kind of confound the situation, but it's like, okay, given the fact that I'm unsure and I'm not confident in the market direction, but I will say, and this is very similar to how we're playing it. It's like, if there is an up direction, I'd rather bet on tech. Because I think we're definitely seeing, when you think about a company like NVIDIA and the way that like, kind of the perception around them and how they might relate to China has improved. I do definitely think we're seeing a lot more, kind of hope long-term around like AI and the continued profitability that we're seeing around like the AI hype to carry large growth companies. Whereas I think, what we're seeing in kind of the short term and the risk is I think people are still waiting to see exactly how, the existing tariff kerfuffle is going to impact stocks, right? But I don't really see them, I don't really see what's happening already impacting, large cap growth stocks as much as they would kind of impact smaller stocks or stocks that are specifically in like consumer cyclical, which has been, lagging a little bit again. So I think, that's what we're seeing play out.
So speaking of tariff kerfuffle, there was a pretty crazy breaking news headline that hit the headlines last night and sent the market higher instantly in the after hours. So a Manhattan-based court of international trade reportedly is blocking President Trump's proposed Liberation Day tariffs. So it seemed to have been digested initially bullishly, but we saw it kind of faded at the opening today. And I think there's still a lot of just questions and uncertainty about who's going to win out in the end, what's actually going on here. Do you have any like reactions or thoughts about it so quickly, or are you kind of in the same state as the market where it might be like we just have to kind of watch and see what happens and how this plays out?
No, I don't really have I'm a bit of a broken record on these things, which is just like we can only play what we know, right? And what do we know about this? Nothing. Like is it possible that this court ruling could really stymie some of this tariff stuff. Yeah, but like the market reacted. The market didn't react as if that was that serious of a threat, to your point, right? I think the problem is, even if you're going to get into the political odds making side of it, which we don't really do, right? Even if you get into that, the political situation is pretty unprecedented. So it's just like, you can't even odds make that well. Like, I don't know how well, I don't know how well a court is going to ultimately be able to stand up to, a president that has really, done a good job of consolidating power and getting a lot of people that are very loyal to them in a lot of different areas of government. Like, who knows how much one court decision can really stand in the way of that. But like we're saying, it does get tough when we see this like divergence in net option sentiment, because we've been pretty successful this year around, not really worrying about the outcomes of these situations and more managing around the outcomes based on what we're seeing in net option sentiment. And we'll continue to do our best and do that. Like, we're pretty even long short. We're weighted towards tech. So we're kind of doing our best to manage around that situation. But yeah, you certainly can't try to predict it, right? It's on its own. It's in its own. I mean, trying to predict it is difficult, and then trying to predict exactly the reaction to it, right? Because like, even just look at what happened last night. Like, based on how people are reacting to tariffs, the first, like, overall, generally, like, bad news for tariffs is good news for the market, right? We have bad news for tariffs last night, and it has a quick rally and it just fizzles. So even if you could like predict that the judge was going to do that, like, you would have probably also predicted the market to have a more positive reaction. So that's why it's just like, that's why it's layers of time waste to try to do it. You gotta manage around the situation. And by manage around the situation, I mean, just like, try to use, be signal driven. Like we always say, signal driven, process driven, and deal in facts, right? When we see decisive movements in net option sentiment that we know, especially this year, have meant, the market's going to go down or the market's going to go up. To us, that's dealing in facts. Figuring out, if the trade war with Europe is actually going to re-escalate, or we might just have some threats and removal of threats or whatever, like, that's too complicated to decide. But you definitely have to pay attention and make sure you're positioned well, especially if we see SPY and QQQ net option sentiment go low, as they did before the last Friday's announcement around tariffs.
And that wasn't the only thing that probably made the market pop last night, as Nvidia reported, and the reaction was good. They're currently up today just under 4%, getting very close back to their all-time highs, just within a few percentage points from it. And I think officially the largest company in the world again, just by a hair over Microsoft right now. You started getting slightly more bullish on the chip sector in recent weeks, and does this confirm your shift in mindset? And going forward from here, the chip space is one that can be invested in, and if not Nvidia, other stocks, but start with Nvidia and then more broadly the chip sector.
The way Nvidia looks in our signals, I don't know why you wouldn't pick Nvidia. Like, Nvidia looks like the way to go amongst any of them. Like we say to some people, if you want something a little riskier, a little more upside, I think SMCI still has kind of more of that value there. But when we were looking at CoreWeave versus Nvidia, like, Nvidia has crept up at to pretty good value in terms of forward EPS. Like, it's trading at a pretty decent, like, let's just get a data point. Like, I want to compare it to Tesla. All right, so Tesla's forward PE for 2024 actual is 174. 2025 is 251. And then Nvidia we checked the other day, but let's get another heat check. Yeah, 2025 actual is I mean, they have different years, 4601. 2026 is 3387. And Tesla's now above 100 in all those. So it's just like, I bring that up to say, like, why would you buy Tesla over Nvidia right now, right? If you're thinking about like, yeah, like Tesla can make the like Tesla bot, and Tesla can do you know, full self-driving and all that, but like, who's powering all this stuff? Nvidia, right? I mean, I don't know if I don't know. That's a good thing. Does the Tesla bot use Nvidia chips?
They actually asked Jensen Huang about it, or I don't know if it was on the call or just on an interview, but he said he believes that like Optimus robot market potential is like trillions of dollars. So
Elon Musk, XAI and Tesla to keep buying Nvidia AMD chips, right? So there we go, right? Why would you bet on Tesla at that, PE? Like, because let's say you're just like, Tesla's going to grow big, right? They're going to be buying Nvidia chips to grow big. So like, that's always the thesis on Nvidia. And with some of these risk factors removed, like, yeah, like, and I'm not saying don't buy Tesla. I'm just using like a data point of like, wow, in terms of, I think people have like slept on Nvidia a little bit. And me, but I wouldn't say I slept on it, because there was very logical reasons around this China situation that made me concerned. But those are looking like, other than one comment that like, the market didn't seem to care about that much, about China not buying Nvidia chips. But I mean, the thing about it is, those Biden era restrictions on Nvidia chips were put on to prevent other countries from buying Nvidia chips and then selling them to China. And with those restrictions down, right, it doesn't actually really even matter that much if Nvidia can buy. I mean, if China can buy Nvidia chips directly, if those regulations are loosened, and they could just basically buy them through other countries. So yeah, I think that a lot of the risk has been removed from Nvidia that made me concerned. And I even held through earnings, because like, I wouldn't have done that, 2-3 weeks ago, before those Biden era chip restrictions were removed. Now I'm seeing like a lot of upside in Nvidia. Granted, it's got the same kind of momentum thing going. If there's trouble in markets, and people start to get worried, consumer confidence deflates, like that's a risk factor for Nvidia. People will sell their Nvidia. But yeah, right now it's looking like one of the best stocks in the signals. And I mean, the way they grow, it's kind of a no-brainer.
So your comparison of Tesla and Nvidia made me think of an interesting question. At their peak throughout their life, who do you think will have the higher total net worth, Elon Musk or Jensen Huang?
I mean, I think it's easy to say Elon Musk, just because he has his fingers in more pies, right? Like, I actually think, especially with like, people think that there's going to be some expensive SpaceX contracts. Like, people are talking about, like, I think the Iron Dome that we're creating being a SpaceX contract. Like, SpaceX could be more valuable than Tesla someday, right? Especially if it becomes like a private NASA, right? And you think about like space tourism and shit like that. Like the margins on space tourism are going to be absolutely insane. So yeah, I just think, with X, with SpaceX, with Tesla, like those are three juggernauts. And like maybe 2 months ago, I might have said things differently, but I think a lot of the negative stories about Elon Musk have died down. And it's kind of like a funny thing that sometimes the best thing someone can do is just not talk and stop making public appearances, right? I haven't seen much of Elon Musk lately. I haven't heard much from him. And the perception around Tesla, the perception around him is like is changing, I would say.
Well, you mentioned the what's it called, the Golden Dome that Trump wants to make around America, and I had a story about Boeing, and it makes me think we should spin right to them because Boeing is set to begin resuming deliveries to China next month, which I feel like should be bullish for their stock. But we'll see what you think about that. But they do some defense stuff too. So like Boeing, Raytheon, Northrop Grumman, could all of those companies kind of benefit from a contract like that, or could they work together and all benefit, or do you think the government would rather choose one company to work on something like that? So how do you feel about that whole defense sector and Boeing's China deliveries resuming?
I mean, unfortunately, I think a lot of these decisions have become more political theater than they have become like actual like defense optimization. And it's like there's a story that I talk about all the time about like they built these F-35s even though the Air Force said that they didn't really need them. And it's like the one criticism that I always have of like our defense strategy as a whole, right, is we're still investing in like a lot of these hardware systems that are computerized while Russia penetrates our systems, while China penetrates our systems, right? So we don't even know, like, we just know that they've penetrated our systems. We don't know the extent that they have. Like I've talked about the Stuxnet virus before, which is a US virus that they planted in Iranian centrifuges that sabotaged their mission. Actually, a lot of people have the Stuxnet virus. They just basically had it propagate through a lot of different computers. And that is all to say, like, I think investing in hardware when you haven't properly invested in defensive programming is silly because it might not be your hardware. When you actually like launch it or it leads to attack, it might be it might just very quickly turn into the hardware of like the country that has the best hacking abilities, offensive and defensive. And in classic America thinking, our offensive capabilities are much better than our defensive ones. But that's all to a wind up to this. Like, I think the idea of people just like flying missiles at each other is just like so 1960, right? If you think about like, especially thinking about like the COVID virus and how much damage that caused and that likely being from China, right? How much worse is like you got to be a real idiot as a nation to like launch a missile at someone that A, they might be able to shoot down, and like B is just like, it's like pretty gruesome, and you don't want to like, even if it succeeds, you don't want anybody sending missiles back at you, right? It's much easier to just send a disease somewhere and be like, oh, I don't know how that happened, even though it originated in a lab in our country, like nobody follows up, right? Look at how much easier that was for them. But that is all to say, hopefully I don't scare anyone too much. But if you're thinking about a large defensive system, like you are thinking about it the wrong way. Like the future, the actual threats, other than like bio warfare, which is very, very frightening, and I think we've already seen, a lot of people believe we've already seen, is nanotechnology, right? Why shoot a missile at someone when you could potentially send, microscopic organisms to fly over borders and potentially just like poison exactly the people you want, not send a nuke and kill a bunch of people you probably don't even care about killing just to send a message. Like, we should be worried if we're building like the Golden Dome. I would support would be actually like like an actual dome that like protected us, maybe even like, got some of the harmful sun rays out of the way while they're at it. Like that actually, like you could use AI to selectively allow things through that were supposed to go through, like planes. But the scary aspect of that is they could probably also prevent anyone from leaving. But, that's the border Donald Trump wants too. Like, what's better than a border? Just this, they walk into it, they don't get hurt, but they're just kind of like, rejected. That would be the real smart technology. It always just like, but that's what I'm saying. Like, Like that's pandering to people that went through the Cold War that still care about missiles, right? Missiles aren't a threat. Like people need to move on. They need to start focusing on the real threat, which is bio weapons and nanotechnology. And unless you're spending money on those defenses for those or hacking, as we've said, defensive hacking, unless you're spending money on those three things, you're spending money poorly.
Well, it's interesting that we're talking so much about like the defense spending today because Meta and Anduril actually just announced a partnership. Meta is going to lend Anduril their extended reality products to help the U.S. military train. And this reminded me of a story. I think I saw Microsoft gave the U.S. Army, I believe, some kind of like night vision headset that they were working on. So now Meta's getting a big military contract. Is this a real score for Meta, or do you think this is kind of just one of those? These companies are so big. How much impact can it really have? How are you feeling about this headline for them?
No, I mean it's smart. We talk about like the kinds of investments that they've made, and they've made a lot of smart investments that are like kind of like longer tail like payoffs. Like, and if you think about some of them in combination, right? If you think about the augmented reality, and you think about like these LLMs, generative, and if you think about even like a PyTorch technology that's like really predictive, right? You start combining all of those things together, and that's a pretty attractive suite of products and services that people can kind of combine in their own way. And that's the thing about like open source. Obviously, the augmented reality isn't open source, but that's the kind of thing that when you have very approachable products like that and kind of like a freemium model, you can start to get yourself some really good consulting arrangements. And I've said this like a lot of the times. I actually think the first big industry that's just going to die as an industry is consulting. And I think like if you think about a lot of what consultants do, like organizing and making reports, like LLMs can already do a pretty good job of that. But like part of consulting is interfacing with people and making sure like plans get executed and pitching a project, right? And I just think like this is a really good example of, and people that have watched me for a bit probably know that I've said this for a while. Like this is a really good example of the type of consulting projects you get when you start to build the right technology and infrastructure, because that's going to do more and more of the heavy lifting, with the person-to-person aspect of it doing less and less.
So it's interesting. Meta seems to be really making a push into like physical products now. I think I even just saw a headline that they're going to have physical stores soon for their VR glasses that they've partnered with Ray-Ban for. I'm wondering, do you think Meta could ever make their own cell phone one day and be a challenger to Apple? Now, from what I've heard Mark Zuckerberg said, it seems like he's kind of looking to where computing is going, and that's why he's making glasses now, because he thinks like we're going to move away from smartphones. I don't know how you feel about that topic, like if smartphones are here to stay or if there's a next computing interface that we're going to all move to. But do you think Meta is a real challenger for Apple in the near future with physical products?
If you look at what OpenAI did with that Johnny Ive company, right? That I think they pretty vaguely refer to what their product is, but it's definitely not like hardware in the sense of how we think about hardware now. I think that's an important barometer of the future. And I actually think Meta's like augmented reality, virtual reality play, I think that's like a more realistic, the glasses. I think that is actually where like hardware phones are going, right? Because like if you think about it, like voice interfaces are getting better and better and better, right? So like if there could be a display, if you could see a display in the glasses, right? What do you really even need like anything else for? Especially as AI increases and it could start tracking your eye movements. Like the glasses can start figuring out if you've read down, and like scrolling is one of the things that you have to do, right? Now, if you're talking about like, I would actually say the main barrier of that technology taking off, because all that is like the very near future, is probably the way pages are organized, right? Where there's a lot of web pages that are like kind of organized for you to like click on them, nav through clicking. So like that's the one, like granted you can say like click on app, click on this article, like and that might work, but maybe like what I'm saying is it'll be you'll nav more directly to exactly the thing you want, right? You won't go to like ESPN and click like NFL and then look for the NFL article you want or the score. You'll just start asking a lot more directly for exactly the type of information that you want. But yeah, I think those glasses are definitely there. I mean, personally, what I really think the tech I'm most excited about is kind of like the Minority Report tech, where it's like a super like where you still get to click, but you're kind of like you're clicking into like a hologram and you're doing that. Like I think I don't think I want something that's just like just in my eye. But yeah, for example, like would that work on the street in the sunlight? I think there is stuff to figure out, but I do think if you're just breaking ground on making like a phone now, you're not spending your money wisely.
All right, so spinning out of the technology topics for just a moment, we will come back to them. I want to bring up Elf Beauty today because they are reacting bigly after reporting. Let's see how they are actually at the current moment. So right now they are up 21%. They were up as much as 31% today. They had good earnings, and then they also announced that they're going to be acquiring a Hailey Bieber skincare brand named Rhode for up to $1 billion. I feel like Michael Burry has to be very happy watching what's going on with Elf stock because Estee Lauder and Elf have very similar stock charts over the past couple of years. And as we've covered recently, he's 100% in Estee Lauder. But do you like this splashy acquisition by Elf? And should an investor be interested in this company now that they've doubled in just the past like 6 weeks? Even though they are down still in the long term. So how do you feel when you see a stock like that? Maybe it's still down from where it was in the past couple of years, but in the past month, they've just ripped like crazy. How would you go about that?
I mean, the signals look pretty good on Elf. You always, I mean, net option sentiment 89. You always have to be weary. You don't want to like catch a falling knife. Well, I guess it's not falling. You don't want to be at the tip of that knife, I guess. But yeah, it's hard when it's something has that much momentum. And I think especially we've talked about acquisitions in the past. Like acquisitions are a nice headline, but there are definitely risk factors when they start making projections off the combined businesses that people basically don't think that, like, especially if you're issuing shares to acquire the company, that maybe the dilution was not worth, is not going to be accretive to the type of earnings that you'll get from the transaction. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely a lot of it's a lot to think about. But I like the upside isn't high enough. I looked at it with 60, like 89 net option said it's good. I'm interested in other things right now, and I might have missed the boat. But I will say about brand, right? I think there's a certain amount of brand where, someone like Hailey Bieber, like grew it and she grew it on her name recognition, right? But if that's how you grow, it's possible that you've like maxed out on your fans, right? If you're more product driven, then you never really max out, right? Because people are coming to you for the product. I don't know enough about the product to talk about that. I'm talking more generally about brand and what this could mean for Elf. Now, what Elf might think is that they can take the brand and the name brand and maybe increase the quality of the product and have it grow to new levels. And that would really see a return. But maybe maybe the flip side of that is like, and again, this is all, I don't know enough about the situation. I'm just speaking generally on how these situations can go. The flip side to that is maybe now that Hailey Bieber has sold it, she's going to move on to like really spending a lot of her time, pushing the next brand that she wants to start. And she's not going to be driving sales of the existing one as much. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out and what happens with Elf stock, because it is not an easy assessment to make.
So we got a comment in the chat from Jord Bow. TMO looks juicy here. We want to check that out in Prospero, George, and see if you
TMO
agree with
looks
Jord.
like, yeah, it frequently looks good in Prospero signals. It's never been something. Oh, I thought I was looking at T-Mobile. Thermo Fisher does not look very good in the Prospero signals. It looks good from a technical perspective. I mean, 69 is pretty good, but yeah, the net option sentiment is kind of in a downward pattern. Good profitability, but no, it's not interesting to me, not based on our signals.
Well, I want to toss up another stock that might not be interesting to you because I saw this story today and then I looked at New York Times in our signals and I thought, wow, if we're not short that, maybe it's a possible future short. But so the headline was that Amazon signed a deal with them to license their AI content for the Alexa. And I got interested in New York Times, looked at it in Prospero. It doesn't look like the signals are reacting to the story in a positive way. How do you feel about New York Times business and businesses like it? Can AI actually revive them if they license their content, or are they just slowly dwindling away?
What is the New York Times AI content?
Oh no, Amazon is just licensing their written content for their AI. It's kind of like the Reddit and Google deal.
Okay, that makes more sense. Yeah, that's kind of interesting. That's kind of like a desperate move for the New York Times, I feel like, because like Amazon is trying to get that training set so they can like, probably like up their writing quality, maybe like make a competitive paper like trained on it. I mean, but there's one thing that Amazon can't do. Amazon can't have New York Times as sources, right? That's such a relationship driven business. But if Amazon is ultimately just like trying to kind of absorb their like writing style, quality, that kind of thing to write better automated content, I think that that's smart. But yeah, like New York Times might be looking bad in the signals for a reason. It's kind of a desperate, it's like kind of like a slummy move for them. Like Reddit, it makes more sense because all of the social companies, it's just all about data, right? You acquire the data to provide value to yourself, to advertisers, whoever. You're already there. Like New York Times, like, makes themselves out to be this kind of like, elite publication that, has such like, faith in in the quality of their content, like selling it in mass to an AI, to Amazon, that kind of doesn't jive with like at least the image that I think they want to put out there. So that's why it seems a little desperate.
And I have two follow-ups. So one, doesn't Bezos own the Washington Post? So I don't know why Amazon wouldn't just like freely get access to that through Bezos. And two, it seems like all of these AIs are ripping off whatever they want on the internet to begin with. Why would Amazon even like want to pay for it? Because it seems like it's happening for free like now. And I mean, they may deny it, but I don't think they really can. Like, it seems like they're just getting data from everywhere. So how do you feel about those 2 points?
So a few things there. A, like you can never have too much, especially if you're like news content written by AIs is not very good yet and very noticeable. And if you want to make your outcomes better, if you want to make things better, a wider training set is the right way to do that. And the New York Times is a good data set. And granted, these AIs can definitely scrape New York Times. Like they might need to like pay a little to make a login and then scrape it, but it is a little harder to scrape paywalls. But there's a good amount of legal risk in that, right? Because look at it this way. There's a lot of people that might work on an Amazon project and see like somewhere that data is being scraped from New York Times, right? Let's say they leave Amazon. Let's say they're mistreated by Amazon, right? Like, who are you going to go to first when you find out that you're illegally scraping the New York Times? Like, probably the New York Times, right? And then that turns into a lawsuit pretty quickly. So while they can get access to that data, 100%, like especially if you're talking about, an institution that could argue that there's a lot of value to your content that you scrape and you scrape kind of against their terms of service, that could turn into like the lawsuit would be much bigger than what you'd have to pay them. And whatever they paid them, I'm sure it's like a drop in the bucket for Amazon. So who cares? What did they was there the amount?
No, the amount was undisclosed as of now. I'm curious now with your point there. Like, if New York Times approached Amazon and is like, "Hey, we're going to sue you if you don't make a deal with us," and then they're like, "All right, we'll just make a deal." It's a better headline. No headline or no. What's the term you always use? Headline risk or
headline risk?
Yeah.
I mean, you're right. But like I'm saying, I'm not sure Amazon was even doing it before, right? Because New York Times, like, if Amazon's doing it, if New York Times knows they're doing it, that's kind of a slam dunk lawsuit, right? It's one thing if you're like New York Times is paywalled, right? So if you're basically like gaming the system by creating paid accounts to do it, like when you create a paid account, there's very specific terms of service. That's part of signing up. It's like if you go to an ad page, right? One of the reasons that you can scrape it is like there's no terms of service. They might put it at the bottom, but it's just like you're not necessarily acknowledging that you've seen a term of service. When you sign up for something, you're signing up and like make an account, you're signing up for terms of service. So I doubt it. If the New York Times like had proof that Amazon was violating its terms of service, I really don't think they'd be cutting a deal, like especially in light of like Bezos owning the Washington Post and like, yeah, I think it would be a lawsuit. But that doesn't necessarily mean that Amazon was pining after, the New York Times content. It's possible that the New York Times to gain revenue was looking for opportunities to sell.
Mm-hmm. So we have one more topic to get to today here. Thank you to nearly 2,000 of you who have tuned into today's stream. And you found us, even though we're at a weird time today. But thank you guys for showing up. Hopefully you've liked the topic so far. If you have, click that like button, whether you're watching on X or YouTube. I have one more topic, and we've been covering some of these more growthier sectors of the market as some of those stocks have made big moves recently, like nuclear and quantum. Does this sector belong in that mix here? Because Joby Aviation, Archer Aviation, and Blade Air Mobility, all air taxi plays, are making bigger moves recently after Joby secured a $250 million investment from Toyota. Joby and Archer are in Prospero and do have decent signals. George, you can confirm or deny that, but for smaller companies,
I think they do. Yeah.
So how do you feel about the air taxi space? Do you think it belongs in that, high upside, high growth potential area of the market, like the sectors like quantum and like nuclear?
Archer looks really good. Joby looks a little less good, but good. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I would even say that I feel a little better, and it's probably reflected better in the signals about these companies, right? Because I do like, if you're talking about what is stopping like quantum computing from happening, right? It's the tech, right? The tech isn't there yet, right? It's not like we're sitting anything there. But if you're talking about like these aviation companies, right? Like there are very real prototypes that can fly, right? And like, I don't know what the testing or whatever, and there's probably like some user error, but like, this is all to say what's holding up these things from being used. Most definitely regulations, and most definitely figuring out like how you can figure out the logistics of people flying these things around and not like crashing into each other or buildings or whatever, right? And I think the solution to that is going to be AI, right? I do think when you can let an AI take over like the flight of these things, you could be much more like certain that people aren't going to hit each other. But that's what I'm saying. Why I actually like the investment in these a little more is it's because you're not guessing when the technology is going to work. And like for quantum, some people are saying, 5 years, some people are saying 20, and like that's a pretty wide guess, right? This is probably narrower. Like how long until we see flying cars, right? I'd say by the early 2030s, like we'll see them pretty definitively. Just in my estimation, just because it's there, and I think people are going to start to become comfortable enough with AI that they're just like, okay, I'll get in this AI car. We'll probably have self-driving cars before then. So the leap from the self-driving car, like, and the regulations around those to, getting in a self-driving, aviation vehicle is, it's a much smoother path where we can kind of see all the steps. And that's why I think it's frontier. There's tons of upside, right? But I think I think you get upside and it's a little safer.
I'm wondering, is there going to be a time in the future when there's no more traffic? Because, like, say in 10 years, say these air taxis take up like 2% of the vehicles, but 20 years it's 10%, and 50 years it's 30%. Like, could it kind of be balanced out more so there's not as much traffic on the roads if people are flying in the future from place to place?
I think there'll be less traffic, but look at people and guns, right? Like, I think this is a good analogy. Like, some people are just going to want to drive their cars no matter how many lives like people are being saved. And like, that's good. Like, it's people that make traffic and their weird driving and weird choices. So I'm not sure we will see a fully automated, like where everybody's in that's possible. I'm just not sure we'll see it. But yeah, people start, fly. Like, I don't think there's a chance in hell that people are going to be allowed to fly these cars around. Like, maybe you could fly it around on your own property, right? Around. But I don't think there's a shot in hell anybody's going to be flying these flying cars around with control, like, and not AI moving them around, right? So I do think, because it's a new tech, right? People aren't going to give up their cars, but I think it's a new tech. People will, be like, okay, I don't have to drive around this thing that I actually might kill myself in. But yeah, I don't think anyone is. I think I think pretty much like probably like 80% of boomers, even if they take some self-driving cars, I think they will like hold on to their choice to drive. And I think a lot of people might be there in other generations. But yeah.
It makes me think, like, what's the thing one day that when I'm that age, I'm not going to accept? Because I feel like it happens, as tech progresses every generation. It's like you're stuck in your ways once you get to that age. So it's funny. The future is going to be a crazy place, though, with all this tech.
I don't know. I'm already there where, like, it's funny. We have a lot of TikTok followers, but I'm like, I don't have a personal TikTok. Like, I'm not really like making any videos of myself. other than the stream, but I just am like sitting, I'm not editing anything. I think like that's an example of something that it's just like, it's not for me. Like, I'm have you do it, Steven, but like, I'm not sitting there in my personal time, like editing videos, like so many people in the generations below me. Like, I feel like anyone like 10 years younger than me knows how to edit a video, send it to their friends or whatever. Like, yeah, not for me.
Well, on that note, it is time to do a switch over for the model portfolio update, and it's going to be an interesting one with such a split in net option sentiment. So everybody stick around, and George will see you right on the other side. And George will tune right back in. So thank you, everybody. We've actually officially crossed the 2,000 total viewers mark between X and YouTube. Let's try to hit double-digit likes on YouTube if we haven't. Yes, we're at 7 right now, so 3 more to go. Oh, it just popped up to 9, so only 1 away now. Thank you, everybody, if you're watching on X or YouTube. We appreciate everybody. I believe, yes, SPY net option sentiment still at 0, so no change from the beginning of the stream until now. And QQQ is at 40. So no change there. let's take a look at the market as well and see if there's been any movement since we've been live. Oh, it looks like the market has gone closer to the flat lines across the board, kind of continued that slow fade of the green open so much earlier in the day. Actually, the high of the day was right at the open, so we haven't got back there just yet. And I like to update the VIX nowadays. The VIX is currently in the red at 1903. So the VIX is sub 20 now here. Let's see if any of the individual stocks have made any big moves in the meantime. Tesla is moving kind of sharply lower at the moment. They were up over 1%, and now they are just actually they're basically flat on the day. All of the stocks that we mentioned in the beginning of the stream, the Mag 7, are the same way. Apple and Google are red. Tesla, Microsoft, Meta, Amazon in the green. Let's check in on NVIDIA.
I forgot to write the investing letter this morning, so we're basically going to do the investing letter and the trading letter.
Okay.
Here.
NVIDIA is still green as well, although coming down a little bit, only up about 2.75% right now.
Yeah, I think I'll probably trim the portfolio a bit.
Jill commented, I feel like net options are stuck on 0 and 40. Has anyone seen anything else today?
Oh, shit. Sorry, 1 second. Okay. Yeah, I wish someone told me that sooner. I don't think it's updating today.
Thanks, Jill, for mentioning that then. Good call out.
Hmm. Okay. We might. It might not be worth updating until, we might just have to cut it here. I don't think updating the portfolio before we get an update of the signals is smart.
For the viewers, could we give them any info on like when you think it'll update?
It looks like, I just tried to connect to it and it's not connecting. So there might be something on our like Mongo server level. But that's fine.
we shouldn't sit here. We'll get letters out once this is fixed.
And when I'll keep looking at it. If I see it change, I'll do a little community post on YouTube saying, hey, it's working again. So I'll try to alert everybody. But I guess we're gonna have to wait and see what the moves are towards the end of the day today.
All right, thanks everyone.
Thanks, George. Thank you guys for watching. See you back regular times next week. Bye, everyone.